Hello. Let's talk about how to check in a device uh, as a repair shop into Uranus. So we've already discussed the idea that this is based on processes. This is based on procedures. If you are creating a work order for an on-site call because you are an MSP or IT department, then you're going to have a slightly different logic, and that's going to be its own video. So let's talk about if you are a computer or smartphone repair shop. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to log into USM. You're going to go over to sales and service. And so you're going to make sure that you have the customer in the database. So in this particular installation, we got 5 customers, and since for sake of brevity for the video, we are going to just roll with an existing customer. But the if it's a new customer, you always want to make sure the customer is added first. That is the very first thing that you do, is ensure the customer is there. So we know this customer has already been here, and so we're going to take a look at the information that we get to store within Uranus for a customer. So the first thing you'll notice is it generates a customer ID. So this is the unique number for the customer. It's not so relevant that the customer knows they have a customer number, but this is useful for um, internal documentation, vernacular, when you're having discussions with people. If you flat out need to refer to a very particular reference. So this is useful because assets have this, customer notes have this, quality assurance notes have this. And so if you're talking to your employees, you're having meetings or whatever, um, if you're having trouble communicating names because maybe it's a name in a language that you don't know or the spelling is non-traditional, you can just say customer number 5 or something like that. And the same thing it goes with companies. So this hypothetical customer is not associated with a company. This particular demo installation at this point does not have any companies added, otherwise we'd see a list. So we have names. So last name, first name, if they are at a business, any roles or positions they have. I know that seems kind of uh, redundant that I'd have role and position, but it makes more sense from the corporate side. So somebody might be, uh, you know, be one thing, and but then their actual role, the actual department or whatever. Yeah, it makes more sense when you work with people, companies, if you're going to use both. Just know that this makes sense if you need it, and if it doesn't, then you don't use it. So obviously, we want to track their email, any phone numbers, if they have a secondary phone number. Again, if they work somewhere and this is for a business, we should definitely be tracking what facility they're working at, just because if we ever have to, if you're ever working with, a business that has multiple stores, that has multiple offices, um, it definitely helps if you have any disputes or any have to talk with somebody to be able to say, yeah, they're in building J or something like that. And there we go. We have track building. So this is starting to turn into things where it's more for an IT department. So if you're a repair shop, chances are really good that some of this stuff here really doesn't matter as much. But if you do have a client, like if you're, for example, you might be handling repairs for a school district that might have multiple schools. So you definitely want to track each school that your users or whatever might be at. So this can be as granular as you want it. I've always found it necessary and important to track managers. Again, if you're having a problem with someone, it helps to know who they report to. Payment status. So if you want to mark somebody as blacklisted, if they're post pay, or if they're on an MSP type agreement, or if you're requiring prepay. So that is the core fields that are most important when you're adding a customer to Uranus. We do have a way of tracking, and if they have like store credit or whatever. So this particular has $46.77. I want to point out that there are no currency symbols here. So if you are using this in a different country where dollars isn't what you're using, then the system can still be useful with no customization, because the logic is, if you are using a certain currency in your country, you know what you guys use. The system shouldn't have to throw the symbol at you for you to know that if you're in America, you're probably doing business in dollars. But anyway, so at the bottom of this, we see some tabs. Uh, these are nice because you can add individual, they pop up boxes over this, modals. So we can track work orders, any sort of quality assurance tickets. If we have notes that are about this customer that that somebody should know, like some customers, for example, maybe you would store a note that they don't like text messages and that they expect phone calls. So you can log this here, and it tells you if there's any notes, so your employees can be trained to look at this and be like, if they have a note here, I should probably read it. And same way with assets. So any devices that we know that they have is going to be logged here. And so whether or not you're rent to own, whether or not you're leasing, whether or not it's just the customer's own device, so at which point you don't have to track, what they paid for. Like but again, so if we're checking in a device and the customer's already there, we our next step would be to make sure the asset is there. And again, call management, store credit. I want to show this real quick, so you can actually log. So if they have store credit and they want to use a little bit of that store credit, you can actually log how much they're using. So yeah, that's kind of a big deal. Some places don't have that. I know that's a point of sale function, and when we bring full point of sale into the mix, that will become more and more important. But yeah, so today we're talking about doing check-ins, device check-ins. So Maya is already added to the database. We have her as a customer, and so we're going to skip ahead and we're going to assume that she is checking this device in. So I would say go up here. So instead of opening the modal, it opens it, top down view, because the customer's already there. So we're going to look at the customer asset. Again, it's got an asset ID. It has a randomly generated number for asset tags, if that's something you want to make use of. It also, you can use this how you want, but either way. So asset status assigned. Um, Most of this is going to be exactly as you would just think of. So again, assets are tied to facility. We definitely want to make sure that we log the type of equipment. So in this case, it's a Toshiba Satellite C47. I have no idea if that's a real model for that. I just fed it sample data, made stuff up. Sounds about like a model that Toshiba would have used for that particular satellite. So that's why it's there. But anyway, so we would log things like serial number. If you're doing networking stuff uh, for the customer, so this is less important for repair shops because you're not going to log MAC addresses. There's two MAC address fields because you would have a wireless unwired usually. Serial number doesn't necessarily have to be the serial number. So if you're checking in a smartphone, you should absolutely be tracking the IMEI number instead. So that way you should always track those. again, if you're doing if you're an MSP, maybe you are tracking and they get a static IEP, this would be tracked here. So all sorts of this goes for if you're an MSP or an IT department, if this is somebody's primary or secondary device. And so, yeah, so in this sample, we're assuming that this was something rent to own or whatever. So, but if it's not, you would leave this field blank. And again, it shows. So, rent to own, by the way, and I'm going to have its own video, all of that is tracked per device. So, but yeah. And so, after we're looking at the asset, we now want to create the work order. You have two choices. You can start a work order this way from the bottom, or you can do it from the top. And depending on your screen size, in this case, we can just use the bottom so it opens a modal, as you can see, as opposed to going to a completely different part. But yeah, so we're going to create a ticket here. So we don't require a ticket number. This is going to be if you're using an external system for tracking tickets. So if you're a repair shop and you don't have a ticket system that your customers are already interacting with you with, then you can ignore this field because the system's already creating an ID number for it. So again, that work order ID is going to be what you and your employees talk about. This is the number you'd give your customer. It's work order number, whatever. Work classification, whether it's you're checking it in on the bench, you're going on site, or you're doing remote work. But in this example, we are doing this. They're checking their computer in. They just walked into your shop, and so you're going to mark that depot. You're going to mark that status new. And since it's a laptop, we'll just say Windows does not load. If you want to track invoices that you generate, because maybe you use something like QuickBooks or Wave or whatever, you can do that too. This doesn't track the customers, so we know it's Myasing. And yeah, so we can track priority of it. It's just a normal ticket. If this is part of a larger project, say they are over, say there's a project where the company is bringing in multiple computers because maybe they're having you facilitate like an SSD upgrade for the entire office, then you could track this work order as part of that ticket. This is where you assign it to a tech. We have a tech called Super Tech, whatever. And so we'll call this computer repair. There are other options here. So like if it's a game console, if it's board level repairs, if it's a mobile device, if it's networking, if you're doing telecom stuff, not selected or other. So this is a computer repair. If you're doing the job at a facility. So this is where it turns into something that if you're running multiple repair shops, you would actually, even though this is a depot work order, you would actually tell this which repair shop. So your own company would have its different locations. So if you're having something, you know, you would add that. So I don't have this added, and I'm not going to add this here, but let's just pretend this is a single location repair shop. Again, so because this is meant for handling repair work, on site rather, it would track work address for the work order, but because this is a check-in, this is all irrelevant. So you're not going to be logging any of this for an actual check-in. But if you are doing on-site work, then these fields make absolutely perfect sense. So yeah, so description, you remember Windows not loading, does not load, shows blue screen, and cycles the boot process. Please give better notes when you do this, but either way. So work order template, you can have a static series of text. So again, if you're doing on site, if you're working with contractors or even just employees where you have a standard set of instructions for following procedures at certain customers, then you can add this to the work order. Custom fields, same logic, but if you have other things that you want to add to it, um, any terms, so if you have payment terms, so I know this is typically also tracked on the customer side, but these are the fields required to create a work order. So now we have a work order, and I'm going to go over here because now, so the work order is created under the asset because you always want to log the customer device when you're checking in. I know that's an extra step, but if you've been doing this long enough or you hang around enough repair shop owners, you will hear time and time again you always keep track of a customer's devices. So that's what this system enables you and requires you to do. Now, you can create work orders without an asset. And that makes sense if you're doing like a site survey or fixing something on a customer's network and you don't have an asset to log. But either way, so we're looking at the work order we just created. Um, there are certain things that we can do here. So there's notes, any sort of QA issues that come up, like say tech damage on a repair. If you have appointments, if you are working with contractors, and there's a reimbursement request from your technician, any sort of purchase orders related to parts ordered. So we're going to go over the purchasing process in another video, but for brevity's sake, everything here is self-explanatory. Not everything is going to be used. Again, check-in, check-out is very specifically for on-site work, and work order tasks may be completely ignorable for your business. But in the case of a thing, like a on-site, not an on-site, but if they're checking it in, it's depot work, maybe the customer very specifically wants you to, check something, right? Maybe, hey, make sure email still works. So if there's anything that because the customers will, as you know, will frequently have other things that they specifically want you to check once you fix the core issue. Hey, I was also having problems with my email, Outlook wasn't opening, whatever. You can actually track that in the work order. And so if your technician can actually go in and make sure that they're checking all the things that they're supposed to. So that's, any file attachments, obviously, any shipments. We're going to, tech commission. So depending on how you pay your tech, you may have a commission program. They could be just contractors themselves that get paid a cut of whatever. So, if you're charging a flat rate on labor for something, maybe you're going to, maybe you're charging 120 on labor and you want to split it 50-50 with the tech. Tech would actually be entering this. And we'll talk about that later, by the way, linked to tech payment. So you can actually track. Some of these boxes don't go away on their own yet. Those are things I'm going to be cleaning up before release. But either way, so all of this tracks everything related to what you do when you check in a device. And the other thing that's going to be really important before we go in, because I for some reason skipped this, so you don't necessarily have to do this. So this is a case of it's completely fine if you choose not to do this. But this is a cover my butt thing, and I'm going to tell you outright, you should absolutely be doing health checks. So and it doesn't attach it to the work order, but you can assign it. So you check the device and you check under the device record to see when there's been health checks. So we'll just pretend that this health check ID that's already in here was for this one, and you just go through the list. And anyway, device health checks require their own video, but we're gonna go over that here in a minute. See you on the next one.